So you people might be working on some mini projects and all, right, in your subjects curriculum, like according to your semester pattern, you might be working for as or you worked for small mini projects. Anybody? Any projects, any software you're creating, any projects you are working, or any final year students are there? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, we
Ah,
did
yes,
make
ma'am.
Power
Yeah,
Yes,
BI.
ma'am.
yeah, Ayush or Brajesh, anybody can share information. So, and what do you mean by architecture or design
Ma'am,
pattern? Yeah,
architecture means designing something or constructing.
okay. Designing,
Layout of
constructing,
the project.
that's great.
Ma'am, actually,
Next.
architecture means different
Block of
modules are integrated to single packages.
Yeah, that's great.
Deployment of
Different patterns, different instances. We are going to integrate it. Okay, so that's great. That's great answers. Thank you
And it
for sharing. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
and use it to address common problems, build flexible systems, improve efficiency.
Flexible. Yeah, that's great. That is also one of the improving efficiency. So common user interfaces we are going to use. So that is also good. We are going to address that also in that architecture design. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your inputs. And yeah, as you people mentioned, so architecture in the sense we are going to follow the best practices during the coding, and then we are going to make sure our architecture should be reusable, and then it should be flexible, and then it should be scalable. Whenever if anything new enhancement comes in the sense, we have to make adjustment with our existing architecture, and also we have to make sure our performance should work properly whenever the new enhancements get into that, and it should be easy to develop also. Okay, so these are all the factors we have to consider. So whenever we are going for the to select the architecture pattern. Okay, so any architecture pattern you might come across, any example you want to share? Anybody? Okay, okay, that's fine. You people are settling down. So simple architecture, you can say that's a layered architecture. Okay, so that will be a common, common. So any developers, if they are starting with the development in the sense, they'll be going with the layered architecture pattern. In that layered, we'll be specifying a data layer, presentation layer, and then business layer. We'll be dividing, and then we'll be working on each and every layer, and then we'll be calling in the UI all the layers together depends on the requirement specification. That is a common architecture pattern we used to say, that's a layered architecture pattern. Okay, and then we'll get into the client server architecture pattern means like all the client, client, whatever the software you have created, that will be deployed stage, we'll be calling it as server pattern, and then it will be we are going to depend on the individual server. Okay, so wherever if you're going for the master slave architecture pattern, in the sense you'll be having one master server and you'll be having a multiple slave servers. Okay, if any request comes in the sense through master, the slave servers will get invoked. If any slave server is inactive, so any issue is there in the sense, the master will redirect the request to other slave. Other slave means other servers. Okay, here it is going to be all the requests carry out through the master only. So it's all depends on master. So whenever the slave is free means this request will get deviated. So these are all the different architecture patterns available in the
Ma'am, you are muted, ma'am.
Malati, you
thank
are
you,
on mute. Yeah.
thank you. So is it fine? I'm audible?
Yes, yes, you are
Ah,
audible now.
yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
please.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
boss.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So as we discussed, like as we do have a number of architecture patterns, it's a client side and layered and master slave and monolithic and microservice event based and all. So we are going to concentrate today these two different architecture patterns. Okay. So these are all the agenda we are going to discuss. So what do you mean by monolithic, and what is the advantage and disadvantage of it? And then same, it goes to microservice architecture also. So as with the definition, you can see the monolithic applications are designed to perform multiple related tasks. Related task means it depends on one another. Okay, it's not independent, it's going to be depend on each other. And then mainly this monolithic architecture they are using for complex applications, they are using this monolithic architecture. Okay, so it's a simple definition. So mainly the monolithic applications, it's designed to perform multiple related. It's related means the one function will be dependent on other. Okay, and then it's mainly selected for performing complex applications. And the main keyword is going to be, this is going to be tightly coupled. Tightly coupled means each and every function is going to be dependent on each other. Okay, that is monolithic architecture. So if we check into the example, so as everybody is familiar with the eBay, like e-commerce sites, right? So Amazon, you can take any common portal. So if you're going for purchasing any item, in the sense like as a user, we are going to enter into the application. After that, you're going to place, you're going to select the orders, you're going to select the product and place it into the cart. Once the cart is ready, so then the calculation will happen, like what is the payment we have to do. So once the payment has done, the relevant invoice will get generated, and then at the back end, the inventory also will get updated. Invoice means our bill will get generated, and then inventory in the means, for example, whenever if you're selecting any product, for example, if you're purchasing some shirt, okay, some branded shirt you are purchasing. So while you are placing the order, it might be the quantity can maybe 100 per day. They might be kept it in the sense. So parallelly, whenever you are selecting one shirt in the sense, the inventory will be the stock. Inventory means the stock. So that will get updated. So one shirt has been sent as sold, and then the inventory will get updated as 99. So the parallelly, the invoice also will get generated, and then once it is get generated in the sense, that will be the output you're going to get the invoice. Okay, here, so when you're talking about the monolithic means you're starting to place the order. Once you have done the order in the sense, once all shopping cart is ready to go for the payment, then only we are going to call the payment option. And then once the payment has done, the equivalent invoice will get generated, invoice, the bill will get generated for us to pay. That's for proof for us, right? Invoice is proof for us. And then inventory will get updated, that to maintain the stock of the particular item. And then we are going to complete our process. So each and everything is going to be dependent on one another. Okay, once the cart is filled, then only we are planning to go for the payment. And then once the payment is done, the invoice will get generated. Okay, it's going to be sequential pattern. Okay, so any question? Are we good? We'll see the demo. Okay, while checking the demo, you can able to see like how it will be easy or tough to follow up this monolithic architecture pattern. Okay, so while considering this architecture pattern, so what are the advantages are available? So this is the three. So we do have a multiple advantages. Now we are going to focus on three different advantages. That is development, testing, and debugging. So development essence. So as in monolithic architecture, we are going to use only the single language framework.
इतना
Okay.
भौरिया कथा का नहीं आयतते
Hello. Any question? Okay, so in monolithic architecture pattern, we are going to use any single language framework. Either you can go with Java or you can go with .NET. Is there any specific language framework we are going to use, so that the development will be we can able to adapt. If it is a .NET developer, they can able to adapt their development pattern. We are going to design the function in .NET only, so that the development will be easy. N number of .NET developers can be work on this application, and then they can take it up the framework. If it is designed for one function, that will be applicable for all the different functions. Okay, we are not going to change any logic over there or any language pattern. We are not going to change in monolithic architecture pattern. The same way, like you can write the unit testing project under the single project itself, so that testing also will be easy while get into this monolithic pattern. And then debugging, as everything is under one roof. If you're creating an application in the sense, so all the functions will be under one roof, so that while debugging, you can place a debugging pointer in that any function you want to check. So if any, after placing the cart, after placing your orders and move it into cart, if you want to check how the payment is happening, so then you can keep the breakpoint in like adding the items in the cart and then payment function. Both the functions you can place a debugging pointer and you can test it under the single application itself. So using this monolithic, and we are going to call, these are all the three main advantages while considering in the monolithic. Any question? Are we good?
Ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
ma'am, actually,
Yes.
ma'am, here in every different modules, if we use different frameworks, can we join them together, ma'am? Like in
That
payment
is
module.
correct, correct. Yeah, I'll come to that. Okay, here monolithic means we are going to use single language only. Okay, either .NET or Java or any Python, any language. Okay, so in monolithic we are going to use any one only. Whereas we are going to see the next architecture, that is microservice. For that you can able to use multi languages. Okay, this is a language independent. While get into the microservice, so that we can able to integrate using
Ma'am, actually, that is
microservice.
because this is tightly coupled, so it is not possible, ma'am.
Yeah, tightly coupled is not possible, and framework also will get different, right? If you're going with the language Java, if you're writing one function, that will be different, right? And then
Ma'am, actually, through to communicate, we will use APIs, right? Then,
that is through microservice. Okay,
oh,
monolithic we are going to use sequence of functions.
okay, ma'am.
Using API, we are going to see the next architecture, right? Microservice. There we are going to communicate APIs. As you mentioned, that is correct. We are going to communicate through APIs. There we are going to use multiple languages. Any language, it is not dependent, it's an independent of language structure in microservice, as we are going to use APIs. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
ma'am.
Yeah, so these are all the advantages, and we'll get into disadvantages. So development, as uh, it's going to be used in the monolithic, why they are going to make it this as a disadvantage in the sense, so it will be like each and everything is going to be dependent on each other. So whenever the request comes in the sense, to get the response compared to other, whatever be the microservice, the response will be slower compared to other architecture pattern, API architecture pattern. Okay, and then we'll get into the scalability in the sense, so whenever if you want to increase the enhancement, for example, if you have created an application only for adding cart and then payment and then generating the invoice, if you want to add any new function in the sense, that's going to be add-ons. So whenever if you're doing add-on the sense, the scalability, the scalability while considering the deployment. Okay, the deployment activity, the faster will be uh, the increasing whenever multiple request comes in there, the response will be slow because as it is dependent on each other. That's why we are calling out the scalability will be uh, very low volume only we can able to take it up using this monolithic. And then reliability, so if there is any error comes in the sense, so as it is each and every function is getting dependent on, right? So if any if adding the items in the cart itself, if you're getting an error, then the other modules everything will get affect. So we may not able to rely on one function. If it is fail in the sense, we cannot able to perform other functions. So we are calling out the reliability also one of the disadvantage. And then barrier, as we discussed, so it is going to be depend on single language framework. We may not be able to adapt other language framework while any new language comes into picture. If you want to use the latest technology like Python, if you want to use, you may not be able to perform in between. So if you want to create entire application Python, that's well and good, you can create, but you cannot able to integrate here. That is one of the barrier. And then while getting to the deployment, the sense once your software is, your project is ready, and if you want to deploy in the sense, so you can able to perform, you can able to deploy, no harm. And if any issue comes in the sense, again you have to rerun the entire application. Okay, it is not like one component only you can give the attention and other function you don't want to. Here it is, we have to redeploy all the entire project, you have to redeploy if any small correction happened also. Okay, that is one of the disadvantages using monolithic. Okay, to overcome this, we are going to see the other architecture, microservice architecture. But this also monolithic also still industry we are using. So what are the in which situation they are using? So it's going to be, for example, if it is a banking, the sense if everything is going to be dependent, if your amount is there in your account, then only you can perform some transactions. If you're performing some transaction, then only you can able to update your banking balance. Some tightly coupled activities, transactions, still they are using this monolithic architecture pattern. Okay, it is not bad architecture, but depends on the requirement, depends on the client requirements, we can able to select which architecture we want to perform it. Okay, so with that we are going to complete monolithic architecture pattern. Now we are going to see the microservice architecture pattern. At the end, we'll see how we are going to implement through the simple example. Yes, Jayashree? Jayashree, you have any question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I saw hands raised. Yeah, thanks, Jayashree. So
Sorry.
with that, no problem, no problem. So with that, we'll be moving to microservice architecture. So as the name itself, micro means the bigger things we are going to divide into small. Micro means small. So the bigger chunk, bigger enhancements, we are going to divide into small services, and we are going to pay attention to each and every services independently. That's going to be microservice architecture. So we are going to comprise smaller application if you want to deploy independently. So you can able to, if you're performing adding the products as a one activity, you can deploy separately. If anything, if you're performing any additional activity in that adding of products in that function, if any changes you want to perform, you can update your function and you can deploy independently. For example, the payment service is there. So if today the product price is right, for example, today the Apple price is going to be 100, so tomorrow the Apple price is going to be increased 200, then you don't want to depend on adding the product function. So directly you can work on the payment function itself. There you can update the price and you can deploy the payment module itself separately, that's independently. Okay, and then as we discussed, the services are loosely coupled, means it is not independent on another. Each and every service is going to be independent. Okay, and then tied together as one of our friend told. So while integrating with the application altogether under one roof, it will be easy while performing the integration. And then it may involve multiple platform, in the sense either SaaS and on-premise. SaaS in the sense it's a cloud-based. So whenever you're performing your services, you're creating your services, you can deploy in cloud independently. Okay, whereas on-premise in the sense it's a standalone or internal intranet network. There if you can deploy in one server and the other nodes we can able to access it. That is the intranet pattern using on-premise. So we can able to, the microservice pattern helps in both the platforms, SaaS and on-premise also. And then it is loosely coupled. Integration will be easy. And then we are going to divide a big chunk into smaller functions and we are going to deploy independently. So this is a small intro of or microservice architecture. So while getting to what are the so this we can able to see at a time. So once you are placing the once you are starting into the application, so as soon you are adding your items in the cart, so parallelly, the payment is keep on updating, but it's not going to get deduct. The request will be get ready. Okay, the request will get initiated, and then the parallelly the invoice request also will get initiated. So at a, within a fraction, while completing the process, you will be getting generated with your invoice and inventory will get updated. So this will happen with parallelly, whereas monolithic will happen sequentially. Okay, that is the difference between major difference between your monolithic and microservice architecture pattern. Okay, so while getting to the advantages, if you can see is an agility. Agility means so nowadays all the applications, all the industry they are following up agile methodology. Agile methodology everybody knows, like we are not going to perform. If you are taking big enhancement, we are going to divide into small enhancements and we are going to release on monthly basis. For example, if you're taking the same example of Amazon cart itself, in the sense, for example, if you're performing adding the products itself to display the display to the members. So for example, the Black Friday came, right? The information, as soon you're getting the informations, you can able to flash it. So the flashing informations you can able to perform as a small task and you can deploy it. Okay, other team can able to work on the other modules like payment module and different product adding modules. They can perform simultaneously, whereas the latest the independent team, other team, they can concentrate on the latest in market announcements and all they can work on. Okay, so agility, the team is going to be work in the agile fashion, whereas the agile fashion, the sense small enhancements will be releasing frequently. Okay, so we are not going to, if you are creating the software in the sense the entire software once it's ready, then we are deploying, means that's going to be waterfall methodology. Whereas depends on the requirement. If you are releasing small releases monthly basis, in the sense client also will be happy. They can able to showcase the performance like this much we have completed. A small phase by we can release. Okay, once it is like introduction we can complete, after that we can go to the uh, uh, like enhancement by enhancement we can able to deploy phase by phase. That's going to be agility. So agility pattern we can able to work with microservice, and then highly maintainable and testable in the sense we can able to test each and every API separately. We don't want to depend on one action. Okay, we can test the APIs independently, and highly maintainable in the sense, so we don't want to depend on other. If you want to perform any amendment, any changes to one function, you can able to go ahead and perform. You don't want to depend on any. Okay, highly reliable in the sense, so if you are getting one error into that particular action, the sense function, so you can able to using your exception handling, so you can able to skip that function and you can able to run other function without any interruption of your application execution. That's going to be highly reliable. You can rely on this architecture pattern. And then whenever if you go for the flexible scaling, so as we have discussed, like whenever if you are deploying, in the sense the scaling will be more flexible, because if any n number of requests comes in also, we can able to maintain the queue by performing this parallel execution. Okay, so independent deployable, as with the name we saw, like the if you are going with the API pattern, in the sense if any changes comes in one module, you can deploy independently. You don't want to deploy the entire application, you can deploy a particular API itself. Okay, so that is going to be independent deployable. So while coming to disadvantages, so development sprawl, in the sense as we are going to use multiple languages, so the people comes in as a developer comes in, they can able to, one advantage, they can able to learn multiple language patterns. So if they are easily adaptable person, they can able to adapt and they can implement the application. If some people they want to go for a strictly, they want to use only a single language specification, in the sense they'll be facing some little bit hiccups while learning. Okay, and then debugging challenges. So if it is dependent, in the sense you have to complete one API. After that, after completion of that, you can come into other APIs as it is deployed independently. So little bit it will be there while debugging, little bit issue. Okay, whereas related to the cost, infrastructure cost, in the sense as we are going to deploy this microservice architecture API, once it's deployed, in the sense the deploying cost, as because APIs is going to be handling with multiple requests. We are not going to send a single request. We are not going to send multiple requests, as it is a parallel fashion. So the cost of the maintaining the server, it will be a little bit high while compared with the monolithic. Okay, so because of the cost factor, the organization has to spend additional cost for that. And then lack of standardization, in the sense as we are going to adopt multiple language pattern, so adapting, so if you're creating one function, so whether you want to go with .NET or if you want to go with the Java, that standardization, it will be initially it will be hiccup, but going forward it will be, we can able to divide as a Java developers, you can able to take what will be the functions we want to design in Java, they can able to take it up. Okay, so in the initial phase it will be little bit hiccup following this standards. Okay, so this is the disadvantages we are going to call it out in microservice architecture. Okay, any question before going to the demo?
Ma'am, you described very clearly. Okay,
It is
okay.
not like we should not use, it's happy to use a single framework also, but we do have the facility to use multiple language framework also. Okay,
Got it.
thank you. So as per the overview, as we discussed monolithic and microservice, right? In nutshell, so what is the main difference? So we'll get into the these are all the different facts, the size. So where we are going to use monolithic, it's a large applications and all components are tightly coupled. There we are going to use monolithic, and whereas microservice, loosely coupled components, we can use it under microservice. Whereas deployment, as we discussed, we are going to deploy as a single unit. Together, all application once um, developed, we are going to deploy as a single unit, whereas in microservice, we can deploy independently. Okay, so while coming to development, as we discussed, so while saying initially it will be it will say like it will be very easy because all are under one roof. We can able to develop quickly using monolithic. It will seem to be easy, but going forward, if you keep on adding enhancements, so during that time it will be a little bit complex. Whereas here, while initializing initial pattern, it will be seems to be complex because we'll be having a multiple APIs we have to define. So uh, like how we are going to deploy each and every API separately. Initial pattern only it will be hiccups, whereas going forward the maintainability will be easier in microservice. Whereas as we discussed, the technology is a limited choice. We are going to use a single, whereas here we do have a framework we can select the multiple technologies for each and every service in microservice. Whereas fault tolerance means, as we discussed, if any issue comes in, if any like any syntax error, if it anything happened, the sense if it fails, that depends on the it will affect entire application. Whereas in microservice, as we are going to, if any individual service fail, it won't affect the other functions or services. So as we discussed, the maintenance, it will be very easy in monolithic, whereas is an additional effort should be need in microservice. So whenever if you are discussing any interview questions is there, in the sense we can able to take a note like how to compare with monolithic and microservice. With this 6 different aspect you can keep in mind, and we can call out these are all the major difference between monolithic and microservice architecture. Okay, so any questions before we go to demo? Are we good?
No, ma'am.
Okay, just we'll see the simple example. Yes, Amit, Dipendra,
Yes,
Raj.
ma'am.
Yeah,
Ma'am,
please
my
go ahead.
question is how we handle transaction failures in microservice architecture.
Yeah, how we handle?
Transaction failures, as you shown the example of e-commerce site, and we
Correct.
adding products in cart,
Yes.
simultaneously it counting that payment and inventory updates also.
Yeah, the
If the
request will be ready.
transaction fails,
The request will be ready. As soon you are injecting, as soon you are adding the products in the cart, right? The request will be
yes,
ready. Because whereas when monolithic while discussing, right, we saw it's a sequence pattern. Once your process has completed, then only we are going to call that other payment or invoice model. Okay, whereas here it is
yes.
request will get ready, but it will be waiting. The request will be ready on time. Once you are completing the sense parallelly, the process will get executed. Okay,
My question is that if the transaction fails, it goes back to the previous step.
Raj, your voice is little bit
Yeah, it's cracking. It's not clear actually.
so we are not going to complete the process, Raj. As we are keep on adding the products in the cart, our request will be ready. Okay, it is not like immediately I am completing the process. Okay, your request will be ready and the payment, we are not going to perform the action. Okay, we are not going to complete the payment like each and every product. We are not going to complete the payment. Your request will get updated with your product items and all. Okay, is it fine?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, Raj. Thanks, Raj. So just we'll go to demo. So is it my screen is visible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
here we are going to see the simple example using monolithic. Okay. So as we discussed monolithic, all the functions are under single unit, and uh, we are going to frame under one single instance itself. Okay. See here. So I'm going to have data service. Data service means just I'm going to define the list of employees. We are going to perform like adding employee details, removing employee details, and then displaying employee details. Okay, we are going to perform these 3 different actions. So whereas we are going to declare the list of employees, and then get employees means just we are going to declare the constructor, the employee list we are going to add it, and then whenever new employee adding the sense, just we are going to send the object employee object to add into the list, and then removing is going to be depends on the employee ID. We are going to find the whether my employee ID is available in the list. If it exists, we are going to remove the particular employee list. Just we are going to define the component, define the variables you can say, and what are the functions you are going to call it out, we are going to define it. Okay, so whereas we'll start with the model. Model means what are the fields we are going to use: ID, name, department, and salary. So this is going to be our model, and these are all the uh, these are all the objects we are going to use, and the main service will be under this. So here if you see add employee, so I have used one console application. So here we are going to, whenever if I click on add option, so we'll be entering the employee name, department, salary, and then we are going to perform simple validation. So if the salary is going to be the double. Like if it is not uh, any any uh, data type, right? So then you're going to say like invalid salary. This is a small validation you're performing. Once all the data is ready, we're going to form the object of the employee. The ID, I'm going to create it as new GWT. It's going to be dynamic value I'm generating, and then I'm assigning the value to my object, and then I'm adding to the my object to the list. Okay, so once the list is ready, I'm going to use the display employee function to display my entire list. Okay, if I don't have any employees, then I'm going to display as no employee available. If more than one count is there, then I'm going to display all employee list. So using this console write line, I'm going to print the employee details. Okay, whereas this remove function, so I'm going to provide the employee ID. I'm going to check whether my ID is available. So if it is remote, as you're going to call this function remove employee, and then if it gets remote, you're going to display the message removed successfully. Suppose in case the particular ID is not available, we are going to display the message as employee not found. Okay, so these are all the three different functions you are going to perform. So all the services are under one roof. So I'm going to, if I don't have employee, I can able to perform the other actions. Okay, so these are simple applications. How you are going to invoke this function? So using this program.cs, I think all are familiar with .NET application, right?
No, we are working in Java.
We are
It's
working
Spring
in
Boot.
Java.
Oh, it's my bad, but it's a same logic, right? So I'm not sure about this. Otherwise, I could have
Yes, ma'am.
create the
MVC architecture is followed.
MVC is it's easy, right? Okay. So
Yes, ma'am.
here is a simple console application like program.cs. Under that, we are going to give the options. So as we are going to create an object, and we are going to list out the options, various options. So depends on the option I'm going to select, I'm going to call the function, whether it is an add employee, display, or remove employee. Okay, it's a switch case, simple switch case I'm using. So depends on that, we are going to perform the particular action. Okay, so while executing this, you can see, just I run the application. So
Ma'am,
entire
may I know
application.
how you are implementing monolithic service in this?
In this, it's like each and every application. So it's a single instance, right? All I'm together create an application as a single instance, and I'm going to deploy a single instance. With that, I'm going to call the functions. It is not independent. It is not independent of each other services, right? It's a dependent, right? Whenever once together one instance I'm going to create, I'm deploying, and I'm going to utilize the functions. I'm going to call the functions. Okay.
You're gonna
Whereas
deploy
if
on the
you,
cloud.
sorry,
You're gonna deploy on the cloud.
no, so as of now, I'm not going to deploy. So whereas while deploying in the sense, the entire package we are going to deploy, the entire solution, we are going to deploy into the cloud or on-premise together. We are not going to deploy each and every instance separately, right? So as it is under one solution, we are going to deploy entire instance into the, either it is a cloud or on-premise together. Is it fine?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
So now we are not going to deploy, just we are going to work through the local host itself. Okay. So as with the program.cs, we just call that menu. So you can display which function you want to perform, like adding an employee, you can select the option, and you can able to perform, you can able to provide the details, and the department and the salary you can perform. So you got the messages employee added successfully. Whereas if I'm going to give the display employee by selecting the option 2, I'm going to display the employee list. So if you want to perform, again add the employee, so you can able to give the employee detail. So employee added successfully. And then if you want to display again, these two employee list together can able to see. And then if you want to perform the remove option, I can select the option 3 and I can give this ID. This is the ID as we saw, like it has been generated as dynamic. So some random value it's picked up. So don't no worry about this why it is negative value. As it is dynamic, some random number has generated. So we'll give this number 1695 to 00935. So that particular employee has been removed successfully. To verify, we can check the employee list by displaying the number 2. Here you can see that particular employee has been removed from the list. So you can able to see only the existing employee from the list. Okay. And
Can
then,
we check the database?
sorry?
Uh, is the application connected to a database?
No. We haven't, I haven't added with database. So I have used the list only. We can invoke as we know, like we can connect with the database and we can call the SQL connection string, right? Any connection string you can call and you can perform the DB activity also. But as of now, I have used list only. Okay, we can invoke DB also.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So as we
And by
perform this,
using switch case, we have performed.
yes, by using switch case and you are updating the list.
Okay.
Okay, switch case, we are displaying the options and based on the number we are calling out, I'll show the function again. So based on the number selection, we are going to update our list. Okay, either you can add the item to the list, you can remove the list and you can display the list value. Okay, is it fine? We can
Yes,
do
ma'am. Okay,
like
ma'am.
as, yeah, we can do the same activity by invoking the connection string of any DB. Okay, you can insert, you can delete and you can perform the select operation also. Fine, for easy demo, I have used only list for today. Okay, so just I'll show the function also again. I'll give 4 for exit. So as you can see, as I'm giving the number 1, like add employee, I'm calling the add employee function. Here in add employee, you can see, so as we are entering the name, department, salary, so we are going to create object, employee object we are going to create, and you are assigning the new grid for the ID. So once the object is ready, we are adding to our list. Okay. So display service is going to be get employees. Get employee is going to be, you're going to call the employee list. You're going to assign the list of employees to this function. So once the list is ready, if employee count is equal to 0 means that's no employees are available. If you have more than one count, we are going to use for loop. So inside the loop, you are going to print the values. Okay. So whereas removers from the list, you are going to check whether the particular ID is there. If it exists, you are going to remove. Otherwise, you are going to say employee not found. Okay. The same thing we can see. Is this fine? Easy demo. Everybody can able to follow me?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank
Yes,
you
ma'am.
so much. So we'll see that microservice one. So this can able to follow me, I believe. So first we are going to create the service, employee service. So inside that employee service, I'm going to use the controller. So here I have performed, you can see. So here we are going to create APIs. Okay, each and every function that will be term in terms of APIs. So we are going to perform, we have to mention the router and then say API controller. So you can see constructor has been given and then so here you'll be having a n number of like as per our information, you'll be having different interfaces. Get employee, here also I'm using list only. Okay, I'm not using the DB here. Here also I'm using list only. Okay, you can invoke using the connection string, you can invoke DB also. to perform this CRUD operations. Okay. So one interface with get employee and then add employee. So you're going to add the object and you're going to call the DB context as save changes so that your employee will get added to that particular list. And then delete, you're going to tag with HTTP delete with the ID. If the particular ID exists, then we are going to remove that employee. Otherwise, you are not. We are going to say it's not found. Okay. So and all the interfaces we have defined under the controller. So this is going to be DB context. Thus we are going to call the functions. Okay. And then here the main program.cs, this you might be knowing like is the model. Thus we are going to define the properties of the employee. And then this is the main function. Thus we are going to invoke the services. So Swagger haven't add the packages. So I'm not going to show that API. Just we are going to run the service only at the backend. Then we are going to use the, so whatever be the APIs we are going to create, that we are going to interact with other application. Okay. So this API is ready now to perform different actions like adding employee, listing employees is ready. So just I'm going to run the application now. So before that, just I'm going to show the other application where we are going to call. So this is also one of the console application I have created. So here this is going to be client application where I'm going to call all the APIs here. You can see, so HTTP client I have invoked and I'm going to call this API. Okay. Under the APIs, this is the endpoint, whereas once your service has been is running at the backend, this URL you can able to use it to perform the CRUD operations. Okay. So using this URL, so whenever the option is 1, you're going to add employee. So as you can see, I'm calling it as await. So it's going to be parallelly, we are going to be, your task is getting generate. Okay. So all the functions, so I have used addition and then display the employee details. So it will be the method will be the API will be invoked with await, because once the API has been invoked, in the sense we'll be performing the, we are going to wait for the particular time till you're getting the response. For that you're going to add it with await. And then you can see this is going to be a task, individual asynchronous task. So you're going to give the employee, that's going to be same pattern, same logic, like you're going to add an employee and you're going to display. The method is how you have invoked, how you have called the method, that's going to be different, correct? So either it is a monolithic pattern or it is a microservice pattern using the APIs. Okay. So once the values are given, so your object is ready. So there we have added directly to the list. Here we are going to call the API with the object. So once the API call has happened, the sense, so you're going to display the message as employee added successfully. Okay, is it fine? So the same thing is a display. You're going to call the API with the list of employee details. So you're going to perform, you're going to verify whether employee count is null, or it is null means you're going, we do not have any employee. If it is have a list of values, then you're going to display the employees. Okay. So as it's going to be the class you have defined for the employee object. So this is the main application. We are going to call our API through the URL as you have mentioned here. Before that, what we have to do, we cannot execute this function standalone. Before that, we have to run the service, right? So the APIs we have created here, and we are going to run this application. So once if you're run the application, we'll be getting an URL. So you can see, so our service has been deployed in this HTTP localhost 5001. So this is active now. Now we can call our function, that is console application. It's a third party application, we can say. There we are calling our APIs. Okay, so this one I'm going to run. So you can see I'm going to give the option add. See, employee added successfully. So if I'm going to give the option as 2, I can display the employee list. If you want to perform, again adding the employee, sorry, it's 1. So employee added successfully. Again, if you want to display, you can able to display. As the application is running, because I didn't stop here, so our application, our APIs is running at the back end, and you can able to call your application here. Whereas see, for example, if I am stopping the service, okay, I have stopped this service now. So if you want to run this, so I'm going to run this application again. Will it work, or if we get an error? The services are not invoked. So now it is we are calling at the back end our APIs. See, we are getting the exception as we are not able to send request as the connection could not be made. Everybody can able to follow me? Because this localhost we have stopped. Okay, we have stopped it. So we may not be able to perform any activity. Right? So this is a very simple way we can able to invoke a monolithic and microservice architecture pattern. Okay. So any question?
And microservices means there should be more than one service, right?
Yeah, more than, for example, right, today for demo, just I have taken 2 surveys only, like adding and display the employees only. We can have n number of APIs.
And that
Okay.
service belongs to only employee service, right? The main feature is employee, right?
Yeah, main feature is employees. We can take a number, because if it is going to be only the personal detail, whatever we have done is personal detail. You can go to the payment section, like salary detail, you can have different modules you can have. Okay, so we can take a number of features. For example, just I have taken the personal detail feature only.
Um, so
Yes.
for each service, we are creating different endpoints. So that is microservice, right?
Yeah, different endpoints. We are going to call the endpoints you can see here. So the main thing is going to be under one root, API/employees. Under that root, we are going to give our different our method like HTTP. I'll show you.
So if the endpoint is same for the multiple service, so it is monolithic.
See
That's the
here you
difference.
can see the router router you have given. The main router is API employees, and then under that you will be having a um, different interfaces, right? So this is HTTP get my API is going to be API/employees under the get employees. It's going to be different function. So if I have any, you can deploy independently also this API, or you can deploy these APIs together also. If you go with the together pattern means you can call that as a monolithic. If you're deploying independently with a different router, you can call that as a microservice. Okay, if you want to deploy independently, the router you can define and you can deploy independently. If you want to deploy under this single router itself, then we can call it as monolithic. If you want to perform with a different router, in the sense, you can able to call that as a microservice. Sorry. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Am I answered?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So any questions?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I want to tell you like same thing you can do from any simple program. So why you are using like microservices and
Yeah.
monolithic?
Correct. That's a good question. So we can perform with a single list, and using the switch case itself, you can perform handling the list itself. Okay. So this is for simple example. We can discuss, as we can take it up as a simple flow itself. Why we have to consider the architecture, in the sense, whenever if you're creating a software, in the sense, that should be the best practice is we have to follow some guidelines. Okay. So the best programming approach is going to be, we have to adapt one architecture pattern. If you're adapting the architecture pattern, means, so adding and deleting the maintainability of enhancement, it will be easy. So here, as we have handled a simple use case like adding and deleting employee list, that might be easy for us. We can implement using simple program also. Whereas if you go with the different like complex operations, right? For example, if you're creating a software, like maybe like Google engine you are going to create. So there you are going to perform a search operation, mail server, and then if you're performing some Google Meet, you're going to handle lessons. So during that complex operations, following the architecture pattern is the best practice in the coding approach. Okay.
Ma'am,
You
in
can
this
perform
program,
everything. Yeah, everything you can perform using a simple program itself, but that is not a best practice if you're going with the complex approach. Okay. Yes.
ma'am, in this program, where we use like microservice and monolithic.
Yeah, monolithic, as we showed in the first example, everything under one instance. While deploying, we are going to deploy the simple application as a package in the single server. Whereas in that microservice, as we have invoked APIs, right? So we can deploy APIs independently. We don't want to deploy entire program, entire application you don't want to deploy. Okay, you can
So,
deploy the
ma'am,
API. See,
basically
if
it's
you
a structure, not we don't have any keywords and library.
keywords and libraries means,
Like basically this is only a structure. We don't have for this library or keywords.
no. So here, as per the example, right, we have used for microservice. We don't have any specific keyword like microservice, like the pattern, right? The pattern of the code that tells you whether you have used microservice architecture or monolithic architecture. Okay. So as a single instance, you are going to deploy in the monolithic, whereas in the microservice, you can deploy independently. So, but as per the simple case, I haven't deployed the deployment. I haven't taken up here in the demo. Just I have call it out, defining the methods as an APIs, and we can able to call that APIs independently in the third party application. That's the other console application. I call that whatever the APIs we have deployed, those APIs I have called independently. Okay, the deployment approach I didn't show for this demo. So maybe like we can take it up in the next session, maybe how the deployments can be independently. We can showcase monolithic and microservice. That will take it up later, maybe in the next follow-up session. Okay, for today, just I have taken a simple example to showcase how we can able to invoke the APIs or as a single instance using monolithic pattern. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, here we don't have any keyword like microservice monolithic. The way of handling the code with the asynchronous calls, and then task based, the task has been called by await. So whenever the API invoked, it will wait for to get the response. Till the response, the status of the task will be in the wait mode, and then once you get the response, we are going to display as an HTTP client response while using the API. Okay. Whereas in the monolithic, thus we have called all in the pattern of individual functions. Okay. Any questions? Shall we have a simple quiz quickly?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, how failure handle is the managed is monolithic application, ma'am.
Yeah. Please come again.
Ma'am, how failure handling is the managed in the monolithic application, ma'am?
Failure handling, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You may, yeah, failure handling in the sense, as we discussed, if any issue comes, a simple issue comes also, we have to go ahead and fix the issue. Again, we have to redeploy entire instance in monolithic. Okay, entire application you have to redeploy, and you have to send the package to the particular server. Whereas in microservice in the sense, wherever any issue comes, for example, if you're facing any issue in add employee, so that add employee module only you can take and you can fix it, and then that particular API only you can deploy. You don't want to deploy entire application. That is a simple difference while comparing if any failure happens in monolithic and microservice. Okay. In monolithic, entire application you have to redeploy, whereas microservice means the particular API only you can redeploy it. Is that fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So quickly, shall we check a small quiz?
Yeah, Malati, we are already on top
Yeah,
of the hours, but yeah, just take a 2-3
yeah,
minutes.
we'll,
We just
yeah,
finish.
we'll complete. Thanks, Vikas. So what is the key characteristics of monolithic architecture?
Single
Whether it
code
is
base.
Single
Single
code
code
base.
base.
Single code base.
very good. We'll see.
Single code base.
Yeah, it's good. It's
Single
going to be
code base.
single code base. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. We'll see the next quick. Which architecture is generally easier to manage in the initial stages of development?
Monolithic.
Micro.
Monolithic.
It's
Monolith.
monolithic. Good. So next, in a monolithic architecture, how are components typically organized? Is loosely
Tightly coupled.
Tightly coupled.
Tightly coupled.
Very good. It's tightly coupled. Each and everything is going to be dependent on each other. So in microservice architecture, what is the main characteristics of each service?
Independent.
It's independent.
It's
Independent.
independent. Very good. So which practice is commonly used in microservice architecture to ensure data consistency across services?
Shared databases.
Shared database.
So here
Shared
it
database.
is distributed. It is distributed because across the service we are not going to depend on one. We are going to, the transaction is distributed at a time. The request is ready. So it should be distributed transactions. Okay. That's great. So we'll see like how now we saw a glimpse of monolithic and microservice. So here we have a scenario. Okay. So just tell me which architecture we have to select for this scenario. So the scenario one, a startup aim to develop a minimum viable product for a task management application that allows user to create,
Micro.
manage and share tasks.
Monolithic, man.
Micro.
Because as it is
Monolithic.
startup and they are going to perform a
Monolithic.
task manageable, that's going to be, yes, it's monolithic. What is the reason to select monolithic?
Simple.
So the speed and then simplicity. Okay. So next, it's going to
Actually, in
be,
startups, ma'am, if they want to change something, how, ma'am?
yeah, if they want to change something, they have to go ahead and change the fixes. Again, they have to redeploy it.
If they actually have deployed it, ma'am, if they want to do switching, like pivoting, they have to again change whole code base, no, ma'am. Then
Yeah, that is the main drawback in monolithic.
so
Okay.
first only we can use microservices, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That is the thing. We have to select the architecture. While designing the application itself, they have to decide which architecture we want to go. If they are selecting first itself microservice, that's well and good. They can able to do the process accordingly as per the requirement. Okay. So that is the
Ma'am, so for
that is
this
the thing.
question,
Yeah. Yeah.
hello, ma'am. So for this question, there is no correct answer like monolithic or micro. Anything we can use.
Yeah, that depends. That depends on the architect because for small startups, right, they don't want to invest more cost. Whenever if you are deploying the APIs, right, the scalability and all, if you want to perform the server side, then they are not ready to invest more. So cost base also there. So during that time, they can happy with monolithic itself. They don't want to invest more. They don't want to invest more on the servers means in that case, they can go happily with monolithic. It is not like monolithic bad, microservice is good. Both are good, depends on the requirement and then cost, everything is a factors. Okay. So that depends on the architecture. So if the architecture is getting the messages, yes, they are ready to invest more money and they can able to ready to invest more developers to deploy. Okay, if they are deploying many developers at a time, many resources, right? So individually they can work and they can able to give the instance as APIs ready and they can deploy it. By the way, during monolithic, they can invest less, so they can hire only less resources, and once the resources are completing one module, and they can start with the other module. Okay, so depends on the other factors, we can go ahead with either monolithic or microservice. Okay, the selecting the architecture pattern is depend on the architect and what are the investments that is going to be accommodate to develop the particular solution. Is it fine?
Ma'am, is it possible
Yes, ma'am.
to convert our monolithic architecture to
Yes, we
microservice
can do. We
architecture
can
after
do.
deployment?
After deployment, that is going to be reverse engineering. Again, we have to change the entire pattern. We can do. Nothing is impossible. We can do. But the reverse engineering is going to be, so instead of calling the methods, you are going to convert that as an equivalent APIs. Okay, it is possible. So that we used to call it as reverse engineering. So the entire architecture we are going to change to microservice pattern. We can do. That is possible. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
but
Ma'am,
small
is there any
intervention.
disadvantages of doing that?
So as we discussed, right, disadvantage means monolithic is going to be if any small issue happens also, you have to redeploy it again. That's a time constraint. Okay. So if the client is sitting behind of you and you're asking to complete fix the issues and immediately deployments, there is time constraint. Okay. You have to redeploy again for if it is a small application, whatever we saw the demo, that is within fraction we can deploy it. If it is a huge application means minimum it will take half an hour to deploy itself. So though you do have a CI/CD pipeline and all, right? So it will take some half an hour to deploy your build under particular servers. Okay, it's a time factor. So and then you have to redeploy. These are all the disadvantages while going with the monolithic. Whereas the cost factor, if you see, you're going to invest very less for the monolithic. You can have a very less number of resources, so you don't want to spend much cost in the server side and all that. We can take that as an advantage of monolithic. Okay, so before selecting, yeah, while selecting the architecture, we have to think all the factors, whether your application should be scalable, you want to perform properly, and cost should be less. These are all the factors also you have to check while selecting the architecture. Okay, so once the initial phase itself, you have selected the best, depends on the requirement, depends on the budget of the application implementation, then you can able to go ahead according to the requirement. Okay, am I
Okay.
answered?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. So other scenario is a large bank and they want to perform independent transactions, then we can go ahead with microservice. So as the factors are scalability, you can perform the transactions independently, and resilience means, so without affecting one function, we are going to perform other activities. The entire application, it won't go down. So with the proper exception handling, we can able to bypass the failures and we can able to display the results as per the requirements. Okay, so as we discussed, so whenever you are selecting the architecture, we have to consider all the factors and we have to select accordingly. Yes, Raj or Amit?
Yes, ma'am, myself again.
Yeah.
Ma'am, actually, my question is, can microservices are interdependent to each other?
Yes, microservices interdependent. Okay, because see, as of now, whatever the demo we showed, right? So I have taken with a single instance all the APIs I have combined. Okay, instead of all the APIs combined together, you can perform a different routes. Okay, different routing you can perform so that you can deploy independently. Okay, so that you don't want to depend on one service with other service. That's why we are calling it as microservices independent.
Ma'am, but my question is, can it be interdependent?
Microservice, it is not